That awareness of where you're at and who you want to become and what you want for your family. It's a very powerful thing. And it just starts with awareness. It starts with not being isolated. Make more connections, just regardless. Everything else from there would fall into place.
If you're not conscious about your investment strategy, you won't end up where you want to be, not financially or as a human. On this show, we interview highly successful investors and share how they overcame limitations to become unstoppable forces of success. If you're ready to learn what it is to be a conscious investor so you can end up where you want, keep listening.
Conscious investor, welcome back. As always, it's so exciting to have you here. But it's exciting to have you, conscious investor, as a friend. And then it's always so exciting to invite friends onto the show. And you've probably noticed a trend. Where do I typically meet friends? Where do I make friends? Well, I live in a town of 2,500. So, you can exhaust your possibilities pretty quickly in that capacity. But I travel a lot and I get to go to so many amazing conferences. Remember when I was talking about the Pay It Forward event that was in Denver? Well, this is a friend that I met at that event, and it was such a phenomenal event. You can go and visit that event next spring, in fact. Remember, it's only limited to 100 people, so you might want to sign up sooner than later. But it's such a great way to get to know people over the course of 2.5 days. You really get to know them. In fact, you might even find yourself with a few new friends late at night in the hotel lobby having a really deep conversation. It's amazing. So I want to welcome my friend Peter onto the show because we had such a rich conversation with a few other friends, and just the friendship just continues on. And you know what? I know that you're going to love getting to know Peter, also Conscious Investor. So Peter, welcome to the Conscious Investor.
Oh man, Julie, thank you so much for having me. That night that you and I and all the other groups that we were with, when we were just bonding out there on the couch in the lobby, it was probably close to 3 a.m. when we stopped the conversation, but what an enriching conversation and bouncing ideas and getting to know each other. That was an amazing event. I will say the Pay It Forward event really set the bar high for networking conferences in general. And I'm really looking forward to the next one. So I'm really glad I got to meet you. I'm really glad that we got to stay in touch and just hear all the things that you have going on, and just really excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so great. And one of the elements about that event is it's old friends, new friends, it's everybody coming together. And I love that that was the first event one of my, very close friends from my hometown, like small town, Idaho, went with me. And now you guys are really good friends. And it's just, It's neat. For me, that's an even cooler connection. I'm like, oh gosh, the world just shrinks down a little bit more. Everybody gets to know each other. So we had this really rich, philosophical, esoteric conversation that went into the next morning, group of us, like 4 of us. And I felt so privileged to just be with other minds that would like to explore all the possibilities, the potential capacity. It honestly, it was like some people want to go and drink all night, or they want to eat candy or something like that. And that to me was just like dinner, dessert, everything, because the conversation was so good. And then I realized, and this is interesting, after having all this rich conversation, I'm like, but really, who is Peter? We talked about all these like super deep life concepts. And I'm like, wow. I get philosophically where you're at, but then I'm like, but what else do I not know about Peter that I need to know? And so it made me super curious. And I know that there's a lot that you've experienced in life that has shaped and formed you and prepared a path for where you are today. So I don't know where you want to dive in with that. So I'm going to let you steer the ship.
Well, I'm always so blown away with how life works in general. We were separate individuals that came together at a conference for a common theme and ended up, like Julie, I will not lie, your way with how you frame questions, and not to really like kind of get at maybe a goal or something that you're trying to get at, but the way that you frame questions to make someone think about, how do I feel about this, or how would I go about that? It was a really enriching conversation. But to directly answer your question, I mean, my background is I grew up in the far mountains in Northern California, a few hundred miles north of San Francisco in a very small town, a little bit bigger than yours. We had a few more stoplights. But it was a very small
Spoiled
town.
brat, you are. Okay.
Yeah, it was a very small town, and I grew up on my bike. I was a bike rider, just riding around the neighborhood, jumping off curbs, skinning my knees. And the way the dominoes fell, I got into the sport of BMX racing, and I started probably, I think, when I was 12. It is when I first had, and I was hooked. I was hooked right away. I knew very certain that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, because that's just how far ahead we think when we were that age. And the way that things went, I very quickly climbed to the top of the local scene, the state scene, and I wasn't making any headway on the national circuit because our resources, the tracks, the facilities, the weather, all of these limiting things made it impossible for me to even be competitive on the national circuit. And one of the track operators at the time, he told me, he said, yeah, no one from this track is ever going to get a national ranking or a national title. And I was like, bet. And so I was just so driven, and it was so certain within me of like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And not only am I going to want to do it, I am going to do it. And when I was fully conscious of the limiting things that the facilities and the aforementioned stuff, I was like, okay, how do I go about this? Yeah. Spent my entire paycheck, drove myself down to San Diego where they have the Olympic Training Center, turned in a bunch of resumes to bike shops. I was working in bike shops at the time, and just spent 2 days down here and came back up and just started making phone calls, following up. And it wasn't until a few months later, I had already exhausted all the follow-ups, and I was a little discouraged, but I was like, okay, I'll try again. And I get a phone call from a shop that I didn't really remember. And they said, hey, we're looking to be open 7 days a week. When can you get here? And I'm like, well, I'll be there tomorrow. And so wow. I split up with the girl I was dating at the time. I had an extra car. I'm really into cars. I had an extra car that I sold to someone in San Diego to fund the move, and packed everything up in my other small little Honda. And I was there within 36 hours, I think. And ever since then, I've been here in San Diego. I did end up getting that national title. It took a lot longer than I thought, and that was an interesting journey. But I did burn myself out with the racing. I was so focused on it, I turned it into a job, although I didn't realize it at the time. Because once I got far ahead on the national circuit, I was looking to like, what's next? The international circuit, the world circuit. Mm-hmm. And that was my COVID story, where I realized the power of real estate, and I stopped racing. Well, the whole world stopped racing, and that gave me the reflection of like, man, I'm not having fun anymore. Like, there's more to life. And I was putting so much on the back burner, Julie. Like, I was putting relationships, friends, other hobbies. I didn't have a life. I mean, really, for 10 years, because I was just my sole individual person trying to follow this dream that I had. And that was my COVID story. I turned around, realized the power of real estate, dove all in right away. I purchased a 4-unit complex up in Central California during the height of it all. I got that whole thing turned around. I moved up there for 7 months myself to do all the work, and got all 4 units turned around, and it's very stable, and I'm looking forward to see what I can get my hands on next. So that's the long and short of it. And I know there's probably a lot to unpack there, but
that's like the skinny version. I just felt like you just gave me like a skinny latte or something. I'm like, is there even milk in here? Like, come on.
Oh my gosh.
Like, that was so tantalizing. Like, there's so many questions I have. First of all, you probably will not know this movie, and it's like a B movie, probably not even a B movie at that. But Conscious Investor, we're usually pretty similar in our age frame, so you might recognize this title called North Shore. And
I've heard of it, never seen it.
Okay,
I've heard of it. Don't worry.
Okay, you've heard of it. I mean, like, it's an old classic. My brothers and I used to watch this during the summer in our time in California. I think we probably grew up within like 3 hours of each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Different eras a little bit, but here we are watching North Shore, and it's about this surfer who's in Arizona, and he's just using the wave tank to improve his surfing skills, and
Right.
he wins the championship, and now he gets to go to Hawaii, and he gets totally schooled. But speaking of limitations and overcoming limitations, it's like, you're right. We are limited by our track. I love that. Like, our track can limit us. And so we have to make sure that we are always expanding that space around us. And so I think it's interesting.
Yeah, don't get too comfortable.
Oh, comfort is such an enemy. My goodness gracious. But you left. It's amazing to me that as a young adult, you were able to just pivot and be like, recognize this is a limitation. And if I want to accomplish this, if I want this in my life, then I have to pivot and I have to be really nimble and go for it. And you left home, you left a relationship, like you just like, done. It's like,
it was a pretty black and white, hard stop, like no questions asked. To me, it just made sense. And my whole life up until now, I've really just driven it from what makes sense and common sense. Yeah. And I think a big thing that maybe sets me apart from the conscious investor or anyone else that's listening is that I didn't grow up with strong family ties. I wasn't fortunate enough to have that family bond, I think, that a lot of young people have. Me and my family, we weren't close at all. We had a big falling out when I was 15 or 16. I moved out, and I didn't align with their values at all, really. It was completely opposite. And so I wanted to race my bike. That's what I went and I did. And I had all these people say, "Hey, that's so courageous that you saw that and did it." And to me, I didn't understand that. I was like, what do you mean? This is what I wanted to do, and this is how I could do it, and this is what I did. It was very easy for me, not even a thought in my head. And so now I think that now that I'm established here in San Diego and I do have a little bit of a family and a little bit of a support system, or just ones that I'm really trying to grow, and I'm thinking, hey, do I want to go out to the Midwest to operate some assets out there? I still think that I have no problem in doing that. I mean, I am very flexible at my age, but it is a little bit of a thought now. Now I can understand why maybe, yes, it's common sense, but that emotional aspect does tie into there. And so I think that we'll see how that changes. But to the conscious investor that may be having other priorities in their life, and they do have very strong ties to the place that they're at, they're happy, they're comfortable, maybe it's not something that you want to venture out. Maybe you live in a place where you can't actively invest in the asset classes or the things that you want to invest in for one reason or another. It could be a really great option to find those operators that do passively invest in that do actively invest in the classes that you want to passively invest in, so that you can maintain your quality of life while still making progress in your financial side of life. Because there are people out there that are not like you, that are completely opposite, where they will go anywhere and do anything. And they're not, I don't want to say tied down, because that's the wrong word, but I do see a lot of individuals where maybe I think that their potential is tied down by their family, because they are very close knit and their family may not have the same values that they do. And it's not a bad thing, but it does bum me out a little bit if I do see some good friends that I know could be extremely great people, whether it's physical, financial, spiritual, emotional, and the people that they grew up around, their family, which they do love and care about, but maybe they put a little bit too much emphasis on believing what they say and kind of how they guide them. So that's just, I think that's my big, not background reason, but that's how it was so easy for me to make that pivot and switch and just, hey, I'm moving to San Diego. See ya.
I think that it would be interesting to revisit that, say, in 10 or 15 years.
It would be.
as you continue to evolve and develop and everything, just like come back and revisit that, because it may have seemed easy, because we can, like, especially when we have fractured relationships, we can respond and adapt. And if we haven't, depending on what the environment has been like in Conscious Investor, you might have a great family tie, but maybe at work, you're having to constantly adapt and iterate upon your role, your responsibility with the people around you as management changes, as layoffs happens, whatever, people come and go. I mean, we're constantly having to adapt. And so it'd be interesting to see how you look back on that as you transform.
Yeah, I will say it will be interesting. And moving forward, like I mentioned now, how I am, I still live in San Diego, and obviously the market is completely different out here than it is in other parts of the country. And me, myself, I'm a very hands-on operator. I do the best business in person, whether it's finding the deals, negotiating the deals, working with the people, and really just getting that value on my end, getting the true life value out of investing, which is helping other people, helping everybody win. Mm-hmm. And I do the best of that in person. So living out here now, where I'm at now geographically did serve its purpose, and that purpose has passed, that chapter in my life. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what's next and where that's going to land me. And yeah, I would be curious to see if I have that same sort of freedom to just up and move, because I can. I'm very flexible, single, no kids, all that stuff, and just doing what it takes to get to where I want to be and to help other people get to where they want to be as well.
Okay, so what's interesting is that, we all know, Conscious Investor knows, Peter knows, like, I'm not single and I have kids, and yet we've made huge moves in our time and drastic pivots that really defied the maybe common sense of what, people around us were kind of like, what are you doing? You're going to North Idaho? What? You just, in 3 months, 2 months, your whole life is completely different. It's really interesting. And I think that as you were sharing your story, clarity is so paramount to a successful life. And so the clearer we are as to what we are striving for in creating in our life, the more we're able to actually make those very clear, decisive decisions. Even now, we talk about, we talk about our life in a very flexible, fluid way, because we're like, you don't know what you don't know, and you want to make sure that you're on the right track. We'll just call that this entire episode. We'll just call it we got to be on the right track so that we can go where we need to go and be prepared, and continually not leveling up because we're restless and we have to feel better about ourselves because now we are at the next level, but because we know that there's bandwidth and potential. And to your point, like, being able to really, good business and good living is all about strong contribution to those around us and to ourselves. That comes back, but that's that personal freedom. You were talking about your burnout, and this happens, and you're talking about how you made, your biking, you realized, oh my gosh, this is a job. I see that happen in my space of, active investors, and you're in that space also. I have watched people over the years have that epiphany of like, oh, I thought I was doing this because I wanted financial freedom. I thought I was leaving my W-2 because I wanted, financial freedom and independence to live the life I want every single day. And yet now I've created a job. So let's talk about, I'd love to know, what that burnout felt like, how you identified it, and take us back in time.
Man, that was a tough part in life for sure. And obviously contributed to telling myself for 10 years that this is where I'm going to be and this is who I'm going to become. And I put all these expectations in my head. I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned, is to dial myself back on my expectations a little bit and be a little bit more fluid and free flowing. Mm-hmm. And that was, I will say it it was a combination of things. One was physical things where I was spending every last cent I had on coaches, training tools, you name it. And it became apparent that genetically, I didn't quite have the genetic gift to get to where I wanted to be as far as power output in the muscles and reaction times and things like that. But I was always so like, no, I can do it, right? And it really was a look at myself, a true hard look and saying, hey, am I really enjoying it how I used to? Am I loving it how I used to? Am I happy? And what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Really reflecting and just becoming aware of my quality of life and just how I felt in general about going to the track. I mean, I really missed the point. And again, this might tie back into my young adulthood with family or lack thereof, but BMX is a very social sport, but it's a very individual sport. It's not a team sport. And so your marketing, your training, it's just all individual. And so I got very isolated I became more and more isolated, especially after the years passed and I sort of lost contact with many friends up in my hometown. I was just one track mind and I didn't care. I mean, I was just so focused on my routine day in, day out, watching myself get faster. And so I think I missed the point of life with friendships and relationships. Like I literally did not care about friendships or relationships if they didn't help me get to where I wanted to be, like in a very selfish type of way. And so shifting on to real estate where it's completely the opposite and you do need to really depend on your relationships and to grow those, that was a big thing where I had to learn how to make friends, how to build relationships, how to function as I don't want to say normal, but quote, normal human in society where you do have to have relationships and friendships to really grow. So like when I was first discovering, hey, I'm not happy. I want to do these other things. Like maybe I'm going to fail at what I set out to do. That was a pretty tough time. I think it took 2 years and a lot of therapy sessions of like self-identity and things like that of, hey, like it's okay to pivot. This is life. And there was a lot of huge life lessons learned there, which I know is going to serve me well in the future about things don't last forever and expectations aren't going to be met and it's okay to be handled with disappointment. So just like how I'll be curious to see how it is looking back on that time, I'm also curious looking forward when I do return to the track, how it's going to be without that pressure of that, that self-inflicted pressure of, hey, you need to do better and do this and do that and all this jargon that goes on in your head. So that was the biggest shift, was identifying how my life, the life that I put out for myself wasn't necessarily the life that I wanted anymore, and understanding that things change and being okay with that change. That was the biggest shift, was the change aspect and being okay with it. And once I got over that hump, it was all downhill from there and free going. So
this is, I mean, again, it's like, this is like hours long. And this is why, when we're all at dinner, we had a powerful conversation. This is why we stayed up till like 3 a.m. This is why there's just so much there in all of this is interesting. I mean, I've gone through a lot of experiences. I had some very traumatizing experiences in my early adulthood, which Conscious Investor, you've heard me speak about this on past episodes. And so it will be powerful for you, down the road when we receive the lessons from that and the gift of what those experiences actually open us up to. It's really, really powerful. I feel like it's created more freedom and bandwidth in my life. And Conscious Investor, This is for you too. I mean, anything that we experience isn't just to, I just got to put my nose down and get through this. And I just got to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get going. It's like, no, remember, sit on that park bench, allow all the feelings to come in there, welcome the feelings, engage the feelings, engage what's going on within you, around you, because it will provide this path, this opportunity for you to expand. and then even pivot into an entirely new dimension of ourselves. Like we're so multifaceted. I think you'll appreciate this, Peter. I've officially declared that we're all, because I constantly talk about how, we're created with all this potential within. It's beautiful. I think, and that we're multifaceted, but I actually think that we're all like disco balls. It's like I just think about when I was a little girl at the roller skating rink, and it's like those disco balls have all these little tiny facets of, glass mirror and stuff around them that reflect the light in different ways. And if we just gave ourselves the opportunity to just simply like see what's it look like if we put yellow light on this side of it and blue light on that side of who we are. I mean, the combinations are endless. It's a lot of fun.
I love like what you said, sitting on the park bench, being in touch with yourself. That is the most powerful thing, because whether you're a conscious investor or not, isolation as a human is the most detrimental. I've observed and seen it in many different people that are much younger than me, much older than me. I love to, I don't talk much, I don't talk much. I really observe and kind of observe people's habits and their repetitive cycles throughout long periods of time over the years. And by far, isolation is the most detrimental thing, I believe, to all aspects of life. And I've made it my number one priority is to socialize more, to create a task in my phone to say, hey, hit up so-and-so that you met at that networking event, because if you don't, you'll lose that connection. And it's as we know, real estate's all relationship building, but being in touch with your emotions. And I know that we hit on this a lot, but it's so fascinating to me how you cannot numb just the negative emotions and not affect the positive emotions. And so if you go through trauma, if you go through, it could be an emotional thing, it could be a breakup, it could be a financial thing, maybe you just lost you made a poor business choice. It could, no matter what it is, anxiety, depression, any feeling on the feeling wheel is directly affected by the opposite on the feeling wheel. And so when I am in my deepest rut, if I am struggling with things that I've struggled with in my past, whether it be trauma or just maybe it's a quality of myself that I don't appreciate or that I don't like and how my brain works, it's like, hey, I am the most alive when I'm feeling this way, and I will not numb this emotion. In fact, I want to feel the deepest hurt because I know that I can then feel the happiest of the happy, right? It's a sliding scale, and it takes an extreme amount of awareness to get there. And that awareness, tying back to what we were saying about where you're at in your life, where you want to go, who do you want to become? The words like, oh, don't worry, just be yourself. Terrible advice. I don't understand why any teacher that told me like, oh, don't worry, just be yourself. I don't know who the heck I am. Come on. I mean, so I am being the person that I want to become. If I don't want to be tied down by finances, emotional things, triggers, things like that, when I get triggered, you better bet that I am going to act and think how I want to act and think, and it will eventually become my reality. It's powerful, that awareness of where you're at and who you want to become and what you want for your family, conscious investor. I mean, it's a very powerful thing, and it just starts with awareness. It starts with not being isolated. Make it a point to make more connections, just regardless. And I think everything else from there would fall into place.
Oh, mic drop. Love it. And one of those connections is always connecting with ourselves and being willing to connect with ourselves,
right,
and receive ourselves where we are and say, it's okay. I'm okay. After editing, and we spoke, off air about this, some of the things that we end up saying, and we become very aware of the ums and the like. For me, it's like, I say like a lot. And my mom tried to get it out of me during my teen years. I remember it.
Oh, yeah.
I know she tried, but I am a California girl. Apparently, it's just going to be really difficult for me for all of life. Thank God for AI and tools.
Right.
However, receiving myself and that first year of editing my podcast and hearing myself and having to engage. I just remember maybe 3 months in, just having a hard time and being frustrated with myself and a little angry with myself and a little bit of everything. And then I got to a point where I just received myself. So it's okay. You'll figure it out.
And how long did that take? How long was that shift, do you think?
The shift from raising the awareness and actually really fully receiving it.
Yes.
It was pretty fast. And I would imagine you would be similar because I adapt fairly quickly to things because I've had to release things in my life as well. And so I'm like, oh, okay. Just if that's baggage, if that's thinking that's going to hold me back, I don't have space for it because I'm so excited about what I'm building, how it's contributing to the world around me that it's like, I don't want anything in the way. Just like remove the barriers. If I'm a ship that's about ready to sink or something, it's like, okay, this is getting offloaded. It's a real quick way to offload anything.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
I want to ask you a question because this could go pretty deep. And this is about being unrelatable. And we come to these points. Yeah, see, that's I'm like, and I think that a lot of people feel unrelatable at different points in their journey. There have been points where, as I transitioned from a public school teacher with a background in real estate investing into full-time real estate investing on a multi-million-dollar scale, I went through this really, I feel unrelatable, and I was having a hard time relating to people because I'm like, oh, nobody really understands my world, my space, and the magnitude and what the outcomes could be. And I'm still always learning how to just, accept that in some parts of my life, I will be unrelatable. And the conscious investor, you understand this. Many of you conscious investors are the first in your sphere to be investing passively in large, real estate assets. And so that can feel very unrelatable when you're hanging out with your friends at a barbecue and they kind of say, oh, that's a Ponzi scheme. Oh, and you feel like, this isn't relatable. I am now unrelatable. I would imagine that you faced that. You were talking about, you left your hometown, you go down to San Diego, you're in this full out pursuit with blinders on. I just sense that there has to be that sense of I'm unrelatable to my hometown. Tell me about this.
That's insane. See, this is what I'm talking about, Julie. You know the questions, and we didn't touch on this off air. I didn't know that this was coming up. And so...
Well, this just came from what we're talking about. I just was like, oh my gosh.
It is extreme. The unrelatableness, if that's a word.
It is now.
And again, going back to isolation, right?
Yes.
Where, okay, so for me, I felt unrelatable to everyone except for obviously the people that I raced with back for those 10 years during high school. I didn't go to college, but that whole time, everyone was like, yeah, like, let's go hang out. I'm like, no, I'm going to the track. Like, I'm gonna go do my sprints. And I was so okay with that. I was so comfortable. I was so happy, just go lucky kid, didn't care. And so it was never an issue. And so now shifting over to where I'm at now, and I don't think I mentioned this, but I do a lot of Uber and rideshare driving down here. That's what funded my first property and what funded my second property. And that being in that setting, being in the social setting, the nightlife, that was an artificial social scene for me. That's what caused me to go deep into workaholism, further advancing my isolation, because it was kind of this fake sense of, yeah, I'm like hanging out with these people, we're having a good time, there's music going, there's all the endorphins going, and like, I love this, but was it actual any true connections? No. Well, I did get some passive investors from that, but aside from that, it wasn't, it was artificial. And so my isolation was increasing. I became an individual that I did not know how to relate to people, like in society on a day-to-day basis. And And I'm actually just now at the peak of observing that in myself. And I'm like, whoa, how do I connect? I do have my blinders on. I'm not very sophisticated in the world events or just general things that people talk about, like celebrities, actors, day-to-day stuff that's going on TikTok or Instagram.
Pop culture? Who has time for that?
I have no idea. And on top of that, I'm working on this. My memory isn't the greatest. My mind is always 1,000 miles an hour in the future. It's very difficult for me to remain present, but that is a big problem. And with the communities that we surround ourselves with, and if the conscious investor as yourself is stepping into this role of, hey, I think I do want to make this step into something that could better provide for me and my family, and all of the fear and the hurdles that go along with that, you won't find that relatability at your local barbecue, most likely. I mean, I could obviously be wrong, but it's something that to most people may sound like a Ponzi scheme, may sound like a multi-level marketing such and such. And it can push you right back into that isolation where your only recourse is say, hey, maybe you met some friends at a networking event. Maybe you took the time to go out to a conference like Pay It Forward and really meet like-minded individuals. It's just like anything in this world with community. If you are into dragsters, you're only going to meet those people at the drag strip. You're not going to meet them at the barbecue hangout spot, again, most likely. But really be aware that there are people that not only will not relate to you, but they will drag you down, and it will be a completely different mindset, way of thinking, just how money works in general. It's not going to serve you any purpose. And I have had to really draw the line with a lot of my close friends where I try my best to keep them as close friends because I want to bring them to the top with me. I want them to succeed with me. And I know that over time, maybe they'll get more comfortable with the idea. But for right now, we are completely different sides of the coin when it comes to that. And it's really hard. I'm finding out just how hard it is to draw that line and to stick to it and say, hey, I want to keep this friendship, but I'm going to have to dial it back a little bit. I can't be hanging out and talking with you for 20 hours out of the week because I'm on this new path. And especially when you're just getting started, it is so overwhelming. It is so overwhelming. You have to be constantly on your game, learning, networking, trying not to get shiny object syndrome, trying not to get analysis paralysis. And it can feel very, again, isolated. So my only word of advice, and I tell this to if I meet like a very green thumb at a networking event, because I remember that was my hardest. Well, again, I'm a little bit used to being isolated, so maybe it wasn't that hard. But when I was first learning about just real estate in general, this was back when I had a full-time job where I was going into the office 40 hours a week. And I would be waking up at 4:00 every day to call people on the East Coast because I was planning on buying properties on the East Coast. And I did that for months. And it was, very paralyzing to like learn all this stuff. So what I tell people is I say, hey, if you ever get stuck, if you ever feel yourself in running into a brick wall or analysis paralysis, or you feel yourself on the hamster wheel if you think that you're learning stuff, but you're actually not doing anything, take action. The number one step is take action. So if you're not taking action, and if you're paralyzed by either information or you don't know what to do, pick up the phone and call somebody. Find one or two people that you trust that aren't that come at a very like unbiased opinion and that have a general understanding of just how investing and how money works. And it's just a good mentor. Like Julie, you are an amazing creator of being able to create a safe space where you can really figure out what somebody's block is and how to get past that. And you can be reached on the phone. I mean, that is a very, very valuable thing for, I think, any conscious investor out there that is looking to either invest with an operator or go on into an active role themselves, but being able to reach someone on the phone and get the same genuine person every time is pretty rare. And so that's the number one piece of advice I have is pick up the phone, get past the roadblock, keep taking action, and keep moving forward.
I cannot even, this is one of those serendipitous things where it's just amazing. I listened to a podcast episode. I sent it to my group of lionesses who you met at Pay It Forward on the last day. And that was just so much fun. And you are all connected and friends. But I just sent this podcast episode to them today. And it has to do with, it's called From Guidance to Guided. It's with Michael Neal, Caffeine for the Soul, Conscious Investor. You know, you've heard me plug this podcast before, Caffeine for the Soul, but he talks about that at the end of the episode, like just take the action. Just take that. You just have to take that one step and then one step. And don't worry, you'll get redirected. If you need to get rerouted, you know, just like our maps will reroute us, like you'll get rerouted. Just take the next step.
The way that I think about that is the quicker that you can make decisions, even if they're wrong, the quicker that you'll get to the right decision. I think of it as, you know, in high school, you had the maze with the mouse trying to find the peanut butter. Right. As soon as the mouse hits a wall, he doesn't sit there and be like, oh, do I go over the wall? Do I go left? Do I go right? No, he's just running down the other way. I mean, it's instant. And that's a very powerful thing. Like, number one step, take action, do something. Even if it's the wrong thing, do something. Number two is to get your living expenses covered. And then number three is to make extra money, right? Like, those are sort of the levels. And sometimes you can jump all the way up to 3 with your first investment, but take action. That's the first step. And it can be so daunting and so scary. But again, if you want to become the person that you want to become, if you want to have the life that you want to have, you cannot be stagnant. You cannot be held by all of the beliefs that you were taught with as a child or through your young adult, or whatever experiences that you have and how you think, the emotions that you have with as a response to what anyone says about anything. Could be the simplest thing, but that emotion that you have that you're triggered with, there's a reason for that emotion. That's not who you are. That's a result of your experiences. So you do have control of how you feel, who you want to become, and how you get there. Full stop. It's just, if you can be aware of that and, you know, keep moving towards that person that you want to become, that by far is, by definition of happiness, is becoming who you want to become.
And that is a full stop right there. Like again, like well said. It, you know, conscious investor, that means taking time to evaluate. So many people are chasing after the dollars, whatever currency it is, but life isn't just about financial freedom. Life is about personal freedom. That's about, hey, if you're not taking care of your physical being, your physical shell, one of my affirmations every morning is, I'm a good caretaker of my physical being. That doesn't mean that I have to be this, you know, person that's going and doing CrossFit every day. And I don't have to be, it doesn't have to be something rugged, but I am a good caretaker of this physical being. I have this body, but if there is nothing, if we lose our health, then what do we have? We cannot enjoy everything else. So conscious investors, take time to reevaluate how am I taking care of my health? How am I taking care of my mindset and my perception of the world around me? How am I taking care of my finances? Dive into your spirituality, dive into your relationships, dive into your creativity, because those are, you know, many of the facets that, not all, but many of the facets that create that personal freedom that people are truly after. It's so much more than just the dollars. Money is really fun. Don't get me wrong, but life is so much more than whatever currency is, you know, the hot commodity at the time.
Money is just a tool. Absolutely.
It's
nothing more than that.
It's such a tool. I mean, like Peter, you and I were friends. We could carry this conversation on so long, but I know we both have a hard stop at the top of the hour, which breaks my heart. So we'll have to, you know, pop on a call soon. But what is, you know, if the conscious investor is, you know, hearing your story and this is resonating, is there a way, like, can they reach out to you? And if so, what's the best way to get in touch?
Call me, text me, 707-489-6236. That's my direct And it probably will be my direct forevermore, hopefully, because it's been my same number for 10 years. Instagram is a good way, obviously, to see what I'm up to and what I'm doing, how I'm operating. My Instagram is at Peter Eberhardt, straight and simple. That's Peter, E as in Edward, B as in boy, ERHARD as in dog, T as in Tom. Reach out anytime. Call me if you're feeling stuck, or if you just want to chat. Would love to hear from you. And Julie, it's been awesome. I can't wait to see you at either the next meetup or just hear about your future investments and how they're going. And it's really been a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to recording this with you for months now. So I'm like,
same.
and I will just say, our conversation and the value we were able to provide, I know, Conscious Investor, this is a powerful conversation because we do have times where we really do have to leave home, in a sense, our figurative home. Like, we are taking ginormous steps and in some cases huge leaps to, create the life and to receive the life that we're blessed with and that we want to bless those around us with, and the contributions we want to give the world. So I'm excited, Conscious Investor, that you were just able to dive into this conversation with us. And don't leave this conversation here. Think about this, reflect on what stood out to you. And it doesn't mean tons of things. Just think of what was the top number one takeaway? What challenged you? What inspired you? What led into more curiosity? Just choose one facet and follow it down the rabbit hole. And as you do that episode by episode, you end up finding that so many treasures, and your treasure chest becomes very, very full. Conscious Investor, I care about you. And so don't be a stranger. We were talking about artificial relationships. So don't make this an artificial relationship, Conscious Investor. Peter left his phone number. You have my information in the show notes as well. And we want to connect with you and talk with you, to encourage you, to support you. And, specifically, I love talking about what is your next step with your investment? What are your goals? Because if I don't have something that's going to serve your goals, I have really great people in my network, people like Peter and others that I can say, let me connect you up with this person. So no artificial relationships. Make sure you schedule a call, that we talk and we get connected on a more meaningful level, other than you're just hearing Julie's voice and amazing guests on the airwaves. And if you haven't already shared an episode or left a rating and review, hey, take a moment and do that. Show some love. Until next time, live big, love bigger, and do great things.
What's the big deal about investing in apartments? Why is it better than investing in a slew of single-family homes? I've compiled a lot of information on why investing in a multifamily, also known as apartments, will help you reach your investment goals. Head over to 3keysinvestments.com and download the Why Invest in Multifamily guide today.